Howdy y'all, and welcome back to the Texian channel. This is the first and what I hope will be many short videos that I put out on the channel where I take a look at an issue, but I don't do as deep of a dive into it as I would for a full episode. And the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that we need new terminology to describe ourselves when it comes to politics and our political philosophy. Because the old terminology that we have I don't think works anymore. This isn't my idea. The first commentator that I saw write about this was a guy named Brendan O'Neill, who writes for Spiked over in the UK. And I thought he was spot on, and the more I've thought about it, the more I think he's right. This old terminology, the left versus right, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, or Tory versus Labor, I don't think any of that will suffice going forward. Left versus right is kind of an archaic concept anyway. It's a legacy of the French Revolution. It comes out of the National Assembly, which was the democratically elected body created by the French people in the aftermath of the king being removed during the French Revolution. And it was a long haul with two sides and seating on both sides. And so you had people that were very pro-revolution, were very, sort of hardcore, that would sit on the left. And you had people that were not quite as hardcore and a little bit more conservative and more moderate who would sit on the right. And that's where we get the left versus right dynamic. It didn't really exist before that. And it's been pretty good. It's helped us navigate quite a bit. We went through the entirety of the 19th and 20th century with it. We went through an industrial revolution. We went through 2 world wars. We went through votes for women. We went through votes for African Americans in the United States. And, the Civil War as well with that. We went through a Cold War. We went through a technological revolution. I mean, it's served us well. But unfortunately, I think it's hit its sell-by date. Going forward, it's just not going to do. Conservative versus liberal, I don't think that really works either. Liberal is a term that, depending on where you are in the world, can mean very different things. In the United States, it means someone who's a little bit left-wing. But if you're an Aussie, if you live in Australia, liberal is the right-wing party down there. And people calling themselves liberal today are actually very illiberal in their outlook on a lot of things. They're the ones wanting to control speech. They're the ones that are wanting to, change some of these dynamics that we've had in the West for a very long time around freedom and free expression. And conservative is kind of a nebulous term as well. I mean, what exactly are we conserving? Do conservatives, quote unquote, even believe in the systems that we're advocating for at this point? I think that was Donald Trump's real key to success. He said, "Make America great again," indicating that we weren't great and that we had to do something to get back to being great. And I think that's why his message really resonates, because as we talk about all the time on this channel, the political and economic systems that we have aren't working for the vast majority of our people. And so when a conservative comes along and says, well, we want to keep things the way they are, there are a whole heck of a lot of people who say, why? This system that sent my job overseas and didn't give me a new one, or give me a new one, that didn't create a new one that would replace it? The system that has deaths of despair doubling and has disability claims trebling, that has my son fighting overseas, that's seen my community be totally destroyed? This political system that we have, this emerging oligarchy and this political class that no longer serves my needs, that's what I'm supposed to conserve? No thanks. Republican, Democrat, Tory, Labor, I don't think those will really work either. I mean, the parties, at least in the United States, are basically the same. They're basically the same. I mean, they say different things on the campaign trail, but when they get into power, we get center-left government. It doesn't matter who we send there. We get center-left government. And really, our political class in the West are in it for their own power. It's not about us. It's not about anything that they actually want to do. They use the parties to get into power for their own wealth. That's it. So why should we attach that label to us? It's nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with us at all. It's all about them. It's all about them and the games they play in the halls of power in the West. And the debates in the future, they're going to cut across these old lines, I think. I really think it's going to come down to 2 different conversations. This is just my view of what we're going to have in the future. Conversation 1, do you believe in Western civilization or are you against it? So do you believe in Western civilization? Do you believe in The scientific method, the rights of man, the rule of law, property rights, independent judiciaries, all of the things that pulled us out of the muck of the Middle Ages. Do you believe in those things? Or, as we're seeing now, do you believe that that's a patriarchal system? That that's an inherently racist system? That it is a system that has oppressed people and isn't equitable? Do you believe in capitalism as a part of Western Civ? That's another tenet of Western civilization. Or do you see that as a structure that oppresses people and is unequitable? And I think the other argument that we're going to have is for the nation state or against it. Do you believe in the nation state, the Westphalian system of nation states, or do you think that we need to have some international order, some organization at the UN or the World Economic Forum or the IMF or wherever it might be, the EU, that oversees the affairs of man? Which side are you on in those two debates? I think going forward, that's really going to be the conversation we're going to have. So what do we call ourselves if we believe in Western civilization and the nation state, like I do? What's the term for that? I wouldn't say that's a conservative, quote-unquote, term, because many left-wing people would be on board. Many left-wing people believe in Western civilization and are appalled by this wokeness and this postmodernism. And many left-wing people are passionate about their nation state. You go to the middle of America, some of these old Rust Belt communities, you'll see American flags all over the place. You go to the north of England. I've heard Nigel Farage talk all the time about the patriotic old Labour voter in the north, someone who loves their country. And these are left-wing people with left-wing viewpoints on economics, for example. But they still believe in the nation state, and they would be appalled by some, faraway elite that's undemocratic. I mean, at least in the UK, from my understanding, Euroscepticism was very much a left-wing opinion for a long time, or at least people on the left had it for that very reason. They saw it as an attack on the rights of people from undemocratic institutions. I think they were right, personally. But anyway, what's the terminology? What words do we use? And moreover, how do we get people to start using them? Because we have to come up with some way to define this. We have to come up with some way to set a boundary and say, I'm on this side of this debate. And if you're on that side of the debate, you are this thing. You're that term, and I am this term. We have to come up with that. Some way to replace these other things because they just won't do. As always, my pleasure to talk to you. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, God bless.